the standard is basically a guideline how to protect assets within your organization in a well guided way. So we said that there is so many standards out there. There is ISO standard, there is NIST standard. It doesn't matter which standard you choose. The most important thing is to follow a standard and try to implement the information security program within the organization that you work for. And we mentioned the companies are going to hire you for one reason and one reason only, is to reduce the risk of cyber attacks. So how to reduce the risk of cyber attacks in a proper governed way, which is which is following a standard. And we talked about the NIST framework. So we talked about the identification phase. If you guys remember what is the identification phase is all about, is basically is to try to figure what assets within the organization. Okay, you talk to how do you really discover what kind of assets in an organization, is basically by conducting asset management and asset discovery methodology to discover all the assets, including hardware, software, application, communication link, network devices. So this is going to give you an idea for what kind of topology and what kind of assets you have in your organization. I'm talking about information assets. Once you have all the information assets in your hand, then you start the next level, which is basically is to understand from the owner of these assets how important this asset for the organization. Because we as an IT, we cannot really tell how important a specific server is. Okay, we can know this is a server of the database. We can tell this is a server for a web application, but how critical, how important, okay, what kind of data exists in these servers, we really don't know. So in this case, guys, we really need to conduct a lot of interviews with the business owner. So the business owner could be someone within the organization who manage these assets. So for example, in the web application, you find the head of development team is the business owner. So you can sit with the development owner for the head of the development to talk about the server, what kind of this server is, what kind of data the servers contain and manage. So you understand this from development team, from network team. You can sit with a different network teams to understand what kind of network devices that's important. We can also sit with the application team to understand, and the database team to understand what kind of database we have and where exactly it is and what kind of data it contains. So this is going to give you the full picture. This is going to give you what exactly you will protect. Okay, because if you cannot really visualize, if you cannot really understand what you protect, you will not be able to protect. So in the first early beginning in any jobs, inshallah, you're gonna be hired for, you really need to spend quite good time to understand the environment, to understand who is the business owner, to understand the criticality and the impact of these systems. Once you understand this, guys, and you understand the criticality and the impact, you start to do the risk assessment. Okay, and we're gonna also today look at the risk assessment again in deep details, but just to give you a quick reminder, what is risk is? Risk is the probability of a threat to compromise vulnerability and cause an impact, whether this impact is financial impact or intangible impact. So sometimes we cannot really say that this risk is really will cause us $10,000, $20,000. Sometimes we can say that it will have a huge impact in our reputation. So the risk is, again, is the probability or the likelihood of a threat to compromise a vulnerability and cause an impact. So this is the equation of risk, the one that they taught us in long time ago. So the risk, guys, is considered, we can calculate a risk score by doing the following, okay? So we can say, okay, you know what? I have an equation here saying, first of all, what is the asset value? So we really need to understand the asset value, okay? Especially the asset value for my organization. So you really need to come up with the asset value. And then you need to understand the criticality of this asset. So the criticality, you also need to give it a score. Okay, so when the criticality is high, mean also the system is very important for the company, and taking the system down or compromising the system will cause a lot of issues to the company. Okay, and also you need to come up with a score for impact. Okay, what will happen if this system being compromised by threats? So you need also to add the impact here, guys. Okay, and finally you need to add the vulnerability score. Okay, so I have an asset. Okay, I know what is the criticality of this asset for the company. So the criticality of this asset could be low, medium, high. Okay, I understand also what is the impact of this system being taken down. So I also need to have it low, high, or even give it a score 9, 8, or 7. And finally, I wanted to understand what is the vulnerability here. Okay, and to understand what is the vulnerability, you really need to conduct some scanning and some vulnerability assessment within the organization. And once you can come up with a score, and I mentioned that the score, they called it the record or vulnerability record or vulnerability score is depend about what kind of vulnerability exists in the system. So usually when you do scanning, you can go and check the vulnerability, and according to the tools that you used, it will give you a score. And this score is really telling you if the system, if someone compromised the system, it can really cause issues with confidentiality, integrity, availability of this system, and also if that vulnerability can be exploited remotely or locally. So this is all will help us to get like a solid score about my vulnerability. So if you said, okay, the asset value, the likability of someone to exploit it, the impact that will cause us when this system is really down, okay, and finally the vulnerability score, you can come up with an idea about if the risk is high or low. Okay, how is that possible? Ustaz Shaza is saying that a plan must be developed to reduce the possibility of dangerous. This is what Shaza is saying. That is the risk. Okay, once we came up with a risk and this risk score is high, okay, or risk even the score is medium, we need to list it, or we need to have it in one centralized place. We call this risk register. And the risk register, guys, is a document within my organization saying what assets I have, okay, what is the vulnerability score, okay, and what is the risk score. And we can just also say this is gonna be a high risk, medium risk, low risk. And again, why we have this risk register, guys? Because I wanted really later on to present the risk register to my management and tell them, okay, we find these risks according to our calculation. This is could be the biggest risk to the organization when it comes to IT. We really need to find remedies to this. Your job in the company in the early beginning, when you start any job in a company, is to highlight the risk to the management and let the management decide what they're gonna do about this risk. So for example, we don't have unlimited budget for IT security. So we really need to work in some project at a time, and then we postpone some things to later on the future when we have the budget for it. So the risk, all what you need to do as an engineer or the cybersecurity analyst is to highlight the risk. So who's going to highlight the risk is basically one document called risk register. So the risk register will say, okay, you know what? I have this asset. It's a very important asset, okay? And the criticality of this asset is high and the risk score is high. So this is really an important asset for the company. And we are very worried that someone can really exploit this vulnerability and cause damage to or effect to our system. So basically what I was trying to say here, once the management, okay, reach the decision, okay, they will start to do you will start to do risk treatment. And the risk treatment we have covered before in 4 categories. We can do risk treatment by risk reduction or mitigation. So this is one of the solutions. And again, this is what we like as an engineers, because this is will open the door for us for more technical hands-on experience. And also we have something called risk acceptance. And we mentioned that risk acceptance is meaning the business already knows the risk and they know that's the criticality of this risk, but they decided to accept the risk as a way it is. And we mentioned that the case that sometimes the business will accept if the risk score is not high. So if the risk is medium or low, sometimes the admin or the government or maybe the head of the organization will accept the risk. And also we talked about risk transfer, and risk transfer is basically the company will transfer the risk to another company by insurance or by other means. So this is another option. And we have also lastly something called risk avoidance. And risk avoidance means that I will cancel the process that can cause risk to the company or can open the door for risk for a company. Okay, guys. So this is basically what we have already talked about in the first early beginning and about the topic of the risk. Okay, guys. So what really drive us to go to the second stage, which is protection, guys, is as soon the company decided to mitigate the risk or to really implement controls. Okay, we just move from risk, which is all of these parts of the risk here, guys, is I would say it's non-technical, except for the vulnerability assessment, and in some cases, inshallah, next month we'll see it, the penetration testing. The penetration testing, guys, is gonna be happening here. So if you guys allow me, I will show you where is penetration testing are taking place. I had like a nice diagram to look at where penetration testing are taking place. If you guys allow me, I have taken a picture of it. Okay, maybe I was teaching another class, so just let me check on my other class. Where is penetration testing? Yes, this one. Okay, so I will just show you how the whole program looks like. I know it's like a bit complicated to understand, okay, but I will try to explain where is the technical part is happening. So if you guys allow me to quickly to show you this diagram. So this diagram is saying that what will really makes us, go ahead and implement an information security program, okay? What is the motive? What is the drivers, okay, behind this program? And as you can see here, if you guys can see here in the left-hand side over here, there is business requirement to keep the business secure. So you really need to have your website up and running 24/7, okay, all the day, all years long. So this is one business objective. You really need to protect your customer data and customer credit card. So this is a business requirement. You really need to be able to do, online transaction and e-commerce. So this is a business requirement. So this is what will make the business go and hire a security engineer. So this is the business requirement. Also, the business requirements, what will drive the program to start is the threats. We really see a lot of threats recently, and these threats are targeting people left and right without any distinguish. And we have seen recently also new threats like APT and nation states, which is even more like really damaging than ever before. That can take you out of business completely, and in that sometimes it can really lead to human a loss in human life. So this is also a driver, okay? And here also, guys, a compliance mean you're working within an industry, and because you're working within the industry, you really need to follow some industry regulator, and the industry regulator will tell you you need to protect your data in this certain way. You need to implement encryption. You need to implement identity access management, and that's what will really drive or motivate the business to go ahead and implement security program, because security program is expensive. Okay, usually business doesn't want to really spend a lot in information technology, but they need it. Okay, why? Because this is of the three reasons. I wanted to be able to have a presence online. I wanted to do e-commerce. I wanted to also to follow the regulator, because if I don't follow the regulator, I will get big fines, and I will be also be punished by. And I have seen this especially in banking. If you're not following the regulation, they will start with fines and more fines and severe fines. And then if they still find you non-compliant, if they find you're not listening at all, what they will do, they will revoke your license. So you cannot be bank anymore. So they wanted really to follow the requirement coming from the regulators. Okay, and also what really I wanted to show you guys here. Also, there is a risk and there is we do a vulnerability assessment, and both of these factors what will allow us to implement control. And we mentioned that the control will be technical control, administrative controls, and lastly, physical controls. So you can see what programs drives. So we have an IT security programs. The business requires stuff. Also, there is a risk that we done a vulnerability assessment, and both of them, guys, will really lead to have the protection phase. And the protection phase, again, in order to protect the system, you need to implement physical control and admin controls, which is management controls like policy and procedures. And also, finally, we need to do the technical controls. The technical controls, guys, is considered as preventive control, detective controls, and finally, we have also correction controls. In some cases, we have something called compensating controls. Okay, but both the risk and the vulnerability assessment. What I was trying to say, guys, this area, okay, this is non-technical area, the risk, to us evaluate the risk. The only technical part you will do in evaluating the risk is to really look at the vulnerability assessment. And the vulnerability assessment, guys, some of you has asked me before about this. Where is the ethical hacking and penetration testing are located in our program? Is under this area. So if you guys allow me, okay, once if I do vulnerability assessment and I find a vulnerability in my system, I will start to implement the technical controls. But here, also the pen testing is also located here. So when you go and hire, when a company go and hire a penetration testers, what they are hiring these guys for, they hiring him to find the vulnerability before the bad guys find this vulnerability. So they go pay for you, and this is what we said before about the responsibilities of penetration testers. He will be able to really tell you which vulnerability exists in your environment, how severe is this vulnerability, okay? And then also he can really validate if it's real vulnerability or no. So this is what penetration testing. So if we highlight the risk to the management, okay, if we have the management under the pressure of a regulator and the management want to really operate in a safe and secure environment, this is what will lead both of us to go for the controls. And we talked in maybe for a couple of weeks about what kind of protocol exists. We talked about the preventive controls, and we finished all the preventive controls, including identity and access management. And we talked about encryption, and we talked about, anti-malwares and viruses and all this stuff. And then finally, we went to detection controls. We looked at how we really can implement detection within the environment, what kind of logs I can collect, how to aggregate it in a one centralized place, how to really normalize it, how to look into the logs. This is what we have covered so far until now. But again, guys, this is our the IT security programs and how it starts. To start by business requirement to make sure they are risk-free, I would say, or secure, or to really mitigate the risk of cyber attacks. And also they do this because they wanted to be compliant, okay? And also compliance, guys, is what will drive later on something called policies and the standards and principle. We will look at our NIST standard is here, by the way, in this area. So NIST standard came because it was a business requirement. Okay, if you guys allow me to tell you a little bit story about how they developed NIST. They developed NIST because the President Obama or Obama administration see there is a lot of attacks happening in the critical infrastructure. So they said we need to have a standard to really protect against the the new cybersecurity attacks against our infrastructure. So this was the driver for implementing or coming up with a NIST. And as you can see, the NIST is like really a big overview for how to implement information security within an organization or within a government agency. Okay, and also, when you have also compliance and you have also requirements mean the business see there's an importance for a certain situation. So you started to come up with policies and the standards. Once you have the policies and the standards and the procedures, Procedures means step by step how to implement this standards. So the standard will tell you, for example, you need to implement encryption, okay, and the procedure will tell you encryption is good, so we need to go and for EES to encrypt our hard drives. And then once you have this policies, okay, and once you have the standard saying that you should encrypt, and once you have the procedures here telling that you need to encrypt using ES standard, then this is also required to implement controls, and these controls are either technical or physical or management controls. Okay, guys, do you understand how this all are connected together? So this is all how the programs are started. We have business requirement, we have compliance requirements. Okay, this is what will push the company to go for security. Okay, because you wanted to conduct the business. Okay, why the business requirement is important, guys? Because we are here as a IT security, and this is, remember, you are here, you are hired to help the business to do their work. Okay, they are hiring you to reduce the risk and to allow them to do their day-to-day jobs in a secure way. In an or in other way, okay, most of the business right now, they have an online thing they do. For example, they have a website that they operate so the customer can visit. Okay, maybe they have an application within the organization to do finance. Maybe they have another application for HR. Okay, maybe they have a factory over here to operate. So they have computers here to operate the factory over here. Okay, so they have some requirement to be able to operate and achieve their objective. If they are a factory, they need to produce 100,000 maybe a piece of a certain mobile every day, or maybe a certain 100 pieces of certain TV every day. So this is if it's a factory. Okay, if it's an organization, for example, if it's a bank, I need to have 1,000 transactions every day. I need all my customers to be able to access my database and do their withdraw and do their online transactions. Okay, so the business does have a requirement, and you are hired to achieve the business requirement. If you really wanted to be the best bank in the Middle East when it comes to doing online business, I can help you. How you can help us? By mitigating the risk of cyber attacks. Okay, how to mitigate this risk of the cyber attacks? We need to calculate the risk first. We need to understand what vulnerability exists in your environment. We need to come up with a risk score, and then later on we can implement these kind of security controls. Okay, and what is the best way to implement this security controls? Again, that's I can say, okay, the best security controls is antivirus. Yes, but this is not appropriate, because you need to combine this with policies, what is really important for the business. Okay, and you need this, then you look to follow a standard, and then you have a guidelines called procedures to implement the step by step how to do this. Okay, lastly here, guys, this is where what we're gonna teach you in the next course, which is about penetration testing and ethical hacking. And me and Abir and Asad will be giving a demo about how to do ethical hacking and penetration testing, inshallah, in 1 week. I know that I just wanted to bring this up. Next week, guys, we kind of have, you guys kind of have something called Black Hat in Riyadh. I'm not quite sure how many of you will attend this conference, but if you are attending this conference, if you're going to the Black Hat, it's first of all, it's a great opportunity because you will learn a lot there. You will have session about security day and night. So it's really recommended if you have the means, if you are able to travel.
If you want to go to this event, I will share the link to register firstly and to get the approval to attend.
Okay, great. So Ms. Abir here will share with you the link for the conference as well. So what I was trying to say is next week it will be a great opportunity if you can visit, and then we will try to conclude most of the course next week, inshallah. And once we have finished the course, we'll be starting the penetration testing part. Okay, guys. So this is just, I wanted to show you this quick diagram before we head back to the lecture. So let's go back here. Okay, sorry, I just went all the way down. Okay, any questions, guys, about the cybersecurity program and how things work? Okay. Anything that doesn't seems clear for you guys? I'm gonna just show you more bigger picture today about cybersecurity, which is the risk and also the governance, and we'll see where the governance and the risk are really meeting together, and we'll talk about it in a deep details. Okay, so in the session today, if you guys doesn't have any questions so far, so I will go ahead and talk about the threat landscape. This is one of the motives, if you guys remember from the last slide I was showing you, one of the motives that we really trying our best right now to protect our online business is a threats landscape. And I can show you some diagrams that the threats that we are facing right now is increasing, okay, year by year. And why it's increasing? Because the attacker find it easy to exploit system online than just go and attack them physically. And because the attackers also find it I would say financially motivated to attack systems. So they are financially motivated. Some of the new attackers, they are really working for a political agenda. Some of them are really pushed by agency and even nations to attack another nations. So the threat landscape in the last few years started to be really crazy. And again, guys, I read this in one of the magazines that I was reading about security. They said if there is a World War III war, okay, it will start first by cyber attacks. It will not start without a cyber attacks. So as we can see right now in Ukraine and Russia war tension, that we seen a lot of cyber attacks are taking place between Russia and the US. If you guys doesn't see this happening, you can really look at the news. There is a news about airport attacks that happened in the US. They accused Russians, and then the Russians in being attacked. There were the Chinese were saying this was a US, compromising machines in China, and then attacking Russia. Okay, so there is, I would say that with a full mouth of confidence that we have started the third war attacks, third world war, okay, and it started to have cyber attacks happening between both countries to the point that they were saying that there is the Starlink satellites, that is the one that's developed by Elon Musk, and these satellites were helping the Ukrainians to really, to give them internet data over the satellites. And the Russians started to shoot laser beams on these satellites to destruct these satellites. So basically, we have kind of cyber war started already between the both countries. And in Germany, they started something called NATO Alliance for Cyber Attacks. So they are bringing expertise from 40 countries, okay, which is the NATO members, to have them in one center to defend against the cyber attacks coming from Russia and China. So we can kind of see that the world, not UFO, okay. I think no, I think there is. I can get you the link for this cyber security defense center in Germany. It's about how to defend against cyber security attacks coming from Russia and China and North Korea. So they kind of, we started the World War III, but only on cyber realm right now. It didn't really escalate to a full war. But again, I'm just quoting this person who wrote about the World War III, that if we're gonna start the World War III, it will start with a cyber war. Okay, and I can tell you the cyber war is already started. Okay, we will look at today, inshallah, in defense strategies. We're gonna look at defense frameworks. Okay, how can we defend our system using something like NIST or ISO? We will look at how to implement NIST framework. This is kind of, I would say a revision, because I will. It's not 100% revision, but I will also add some new stuff that it will make sense for you when we study. Okay. So again, why they will hire you? What is the business motivation? Okay, what is the business driver to hire someone is here, because organization right now are really relying on the information security. They really heavily relying on information security. If you go to a hospital, you find the whole thing is really relying on computer systems. The whole operation of the hospital is now really, you go to, I would say, I don't know, I know that you guys, you are not as old as me, but if you go 10 years ago to a hospital, mostly everything was done in a paperwork, or your record, or your, Naif is saying hospital use HISAC. Okay, I'm not quite sure what is HISAC, but I know that hospital right now are completely computerized. Maybe Naif is trying to mention the system that they are using. Okay, health information sharing and analysis centers. Yes, so this is a kind of system they're using right now. And these system, guys, it used to be working in an isolated land. So what I'm just giving you an example. So before, you have one hospital in maybe Jeddah and another hospital in Riyadh. They are really doesn't have anything to do with each other. So you go here, even if there is a computer here, you find all the data located here. Okay, but with the euphoria of the internet and easy to connect between systems, you will find these Jeddah health center or Markaz al-Sahi is completely connected to this new Riyadh also hospital, and they can share information, and they can also maybe they cannot treat one patient here, they can transfer his record to the new hospital, and he will go find everything, who have checked him, what kind of disease he have, and all this kind of information regarding patients. So what we have seen right now, even in the hospital, they are relying a lot on technology. Okay, if you guys having also oil and gas sector, especially in Saudi Arabia, they have also digitalized the entire systems. They did digital transformation for oil and gas. I have seen a video, you can find it in YouTube, about Aramco and how Aramco, they developed an operation centers based on a huge screens and based on information they got from everywhere since the exploration for oil and gas all the way until they deliver the oil and gas to the gas station. They have everything is computerized, everything with the sensors, everything is really digitalized right now. So with all our relying on information, so one single attacks can take this all down. And when we take these all things down, we cannot really have this information that we used to know. Okay, how many barrel of petrols we have. Okay, you go to the hospital because the computer is down, or maybe the database has been hacked, you cannot find the patient records anymore. Okay, so this is kind of things, especially if you are in a ransom attacks, you try to get the right prescription or the right description for the medicine for maybe a patient. You cannot really get it because the system all cribbed by the ransom attacks. So what I'm trying to say, guys, right now, that we relying in technology in unintended way, and that's why organization really worried about the cybersecurity attacks. I have shown you last Thursday that's in the World Economy Forum. That's the top 5 risk for organization right now. One of the top 5 is cyber attack or cyber security. So that shows you that the company are willing to hire people who is educated and they have the know-how how to protect and mitigate the risk of cyber attacks. Okay, and here was what we mentioned. What makes it really worse, these systems are constantly subject to serious threats. Why the system are constantly objected for cybersecurity? Because we are open now to the internet. Okay, if we used to work in isolated islands, that is what I mean, air gap. Sometimes we call it air gap environment, air gap, that you don't have any connection to the internet. Okay, with no connection to the internet, only physical attacks will work. Okay, because you don't have any other logic mean to reach your network. But with our hospital are connected to the internet, with bring your own devices in the scene. Okay, with working with the cloud to save your data and save other people data in the cloud. Okay, now your data is based on the internet. Okay, Sorry, guys. So basically, we're having threats all the time now. Why? Because we open the door for the internet threats. Okay, why? Because the attacker now, they cannot come logically. They can be sitting there in somewhere in the US or maybe somewhere in Russia, and they can connect to the internet. Then because you have some system are connected to the internet, they have the attack vector is set up for them, or they have the entry point to get to you. Okay, and again, what I have explained to you, and also maybe Sarah's day on Wednesday, that the attackers are very smart. Okay, if they are after exactly, we as Shaza saying that we have attacks in all cases, attacks in all layers. So they can attack your network, they can attack your operating system, they can attack your application, they can attack even the human who's monitor and who's really operating the system. So we have social engineering. So they are really smart. They just doesn't stop, and they always have an idea how to really attack and compromise computers. Okay, guys. So this is why it's becoming really serious threats, because one serious attack, as I mentioned, can really can stop the entire business. We have seen this in the Colonial pipeline that's happened in last year in the US. One single ransom attack stopped the whole Colonial ERP system, which is a system that they manage the finance and exportation of oil and gas. Okay, and then you can see a lot of cars are standing in a queue waiting for the gasoline. The gasoline prices are really going up, and then finally this company had to pay ransom of $4 or $5 million to the attacker to release their system again, so they can use their system. Okay, but this is kind of threats that exist right now. Okay, the most significant threat to system come from purposeful attacks, which is mean direct attacks. That means that the attacker knows exactly who is the victims, and they have done a proper studying about the victim. So this is not like a random attack. This is like really with a target in mind and directed to someone, that are often disciplined, well organized, and well funded and advanced attacks. And this are the significant threats. We talked about the significant threats, guys. That's why we need to establish ransom awareness. Bravo and AIF. This is could be only managerial controls, but we really also need the technical controls. So ransom awareness is one of the steps, but we really need to complete this picture with technical controls like backup and antivirus. Okay, it may be did you commercial competitions. What do you mean by commercial competitions, Shaza? Okay, so again, what I was trying to say here, guys, the most advanced attacks is the one that comes from ABTs and nation states. If you really been targeted by nation states and ABTs, you should really strive to protect your system, because these guys, as he mentioned here, it's well organized, well funded. They have the capability, they have the motive. Okay, because some of them, they really think they do a great favor for their country by doing this. So they are motivated, they have the capability, they are well trained, and also they do have the funding, which is very important. They can go and buy exploits. There is something called exploits market. They can go buy zero-day exploits for a lot of money to just attack your system. Okay, guys? So successful attack on information system can result in a serious or catastrophic damage to not just the organization assets and operation, but also to individual, other organization and nations. So he's saying like, okay, look at the big pictures. If someone is attacking your oil and gas industry in Saudi Arabia, that doesn't mean it's going to affect only the organization that been hit by these attacks. So no, this can really has a serious implication on not only the company as an information asset, but sometimes some people are attacking to cause harm, to cause really damage. So they can really explode a pipeline, or they can explode a gas repository. Okay, so that means individuals who work inside these organization can be in dangerous, and they can lose their life. Okay, if you guys have any doubts about this, You can see how many people has lost their life because attacks that happen in the SCADA system and oil and gas industry. There is so many explosions that happen because of attacks and people lost their life. And again, also what he mentioned here, also look that if you work in one of these organization, that is not only the attack will impact the organization information assets or even individual, it can hurt the entire economy and entire nation, especially if your economy is based on oil and gas and you have someone who's really going after your big crown jewels companies to take it down, and they will not be able to operate. That means the revenue that you used to generate, it will not reflect on the company or reflect on the nation. That means they will hit the economy. And we know all that when the economy is bad, it's really opened the door for so many other issues. So look at the big picture and keep it in your mind. That's maybe it looks like a cybersecurity attacks, but it has really great consequences than just the company itself as it's damaging the information assets. It maybe can cause human loss and maybe it can cause a lot of damage for the entire economy. So this is just to give you an idea why we really need to do work. And this is what I keep telling myself. Yeah, okay, so they do this for espionage. So this is what Shaza was saying, that sometimes companies, they are doing with espionage or something, they call it, organization espionage, to steal other company trade secrets, and they steal their information assets. So I agree with Shaza, this is also exists. And that's why I get you guys like a small diagram over here. Okay, this is the threats landscape is changing. I give to you what kind of threats exist, why we are talking about threats today specifically. Okay, we have already covered what threats is all about and how can we really find indication of compromise and threats within the organization. Now we're talking about threats in the realm of risk. So in order to really tell about the risk, you need two factors. You need to talk about vulnerabilities and you need to talk about threats. So we started our day to talking about threats. So this is kind of a little bit old report from Symantec, but you can guys go and see the recent Symantec report. Okay, it's called Internet Security Threat Report. Okay, and Symantec is saying that attacks are increasing. Okay, and you can tell right now, guys, it's also the attacks are increasing. So even if you get the latest one of 2022 from Internet Security, they will tell you definitely increasing. How do you know they're increasing? Basically, they watch two things. First of all, in the US and in other countries, it's obligatory for you, if you're being breached, to come up in the public and say we are being breached, and they will tell you exactly, and you tell the public that you're being breached, so the other companies know how you've been breached. So this is one reason. The second thing, big information security vendors, they have their own research labs, they have their own honeypots, they have their own sensors all over the world, and they can monitor what kind of malicious activity and malicious samples they collect from the internet and from their honeypots. So they can come up with saying, okay, we have seen increase, okay, in this, okay, and we have seen increase in the breach in financial centers. And another reason why big vendors, they know about this, because they will be called to really, in some cases, to really find out about what happened. So Symantec, for example, is the one that find about Stuxnet, and they wrote a whole big report about Stuxnet. So they will be called sometimes to investigate an issue. So they will have an insight. Okay, we have increase in attacks in our honeypots. We have increase for the company that's been breached this year, and they announced the breach. And we have called so many times to really find and rectify breach as an incident handler or incident response. So they will be able to really write a report by the end of the year to highlight what kind of threats they have seen and what kind of increase they have seen from last year to this year. So this kind of thing, we are saying that there is almost 50% or 45% increase in target attacks. And again, target attacks mean that you have the threats is really know the target, and you really know how to what kind of target, and the threats is in ABT or something. Okay, we have also new vulnerabilities, 5,500 new vulnerabilities that we find about. That means these are the vulnerabilities that has been you know, it's not 0-day anymore. It's known as a vulnerability, and the vendor knows it's a vulnerability, and he find an update or patch for this vulnerability. So they count this by looking at Microsoft, what kind of vulnerability exists, by looking at Cisco, what vulnerability exists, by looking at Linux, what vulnerability exists, and they calculate all these vulnerabilities, and they come up with a solid number like 5,000 new vulnerability discount, like they discovered, and they now it exists. Okay, 55% increase in phishing campaigns. So since 2006, 2007, we've seen a lot of increase in phishing campaigns. And phishing campaigns basically is when the attacker are targeting a group of people using emails to trick them to maybe steal their credential, or maybe to have a foothold within the organization, or to compromise their machines. Okay, code, it is known threats. Okay, Naif is saying polymorphic codes, or this is kind of you know, malwares. I will explain the malwares. If you just give me 1 second, I will show you one interesting thing. I told you guys before that malware is one of the best tools that exist now for the attackers, because it allows them to do ransom attacks. It allows them to really compromise a machine. So the malware, they are just developing a malware, and there's so many platforms to develop malwares right now. Okay, and they can just release the malware. And you know, by visiting a website, or maybe downloading a file, or maybe run this, you know, in the background in your machine, they will compromise the machine. Or maybe by doing a Trojan horse that convince you this is a nice game, and once you run it, you are compromised with this malware. So the malware, one of the best tools that the attacker they use. Okay, just out of these 5,000, we have around 400 or 500 new vulnerabilities in mobile operating system. So don't be under the, you know, the wrong perception that mobiles are secure. No, the mobile are gaining a lot of momentum since 2017. Why, guys? Because the attacker knows that a lot of people right now, they are using mobile, and the attackers are after whatever is user are using. Okay, and they know also that a lot of companies, they allowed their employees for so many reasons to bring their own device. So they have this policy of bring your own device within the organization. So the attacker now, they are moving their shift from attacking the, you know, the servers and the computers, and they really go after the basically the mobile system. I agree with Naif. Naif is saying management console for our bring to own device. So this is also is important. Okay, again, 54 0-day vulnerabilities, up to 125%. Okay, than last year. So we have more 0 days than it used to be. Like, so last year we discovered 55, for example. This year's we discovered 54. So there is more 0 days are being discovered. Okay, 43 of target attacks aimed at business with less than 250 employees. Why? Because the attackers are smart. They know that the big companies are spending a lot in IT system security, and they are having enough funded to defend them. So the attackers are really go after, you know, the mid-size. They don't have enough means to really protect and detect all the new attacks. So they are going after the easy targets. That's why, guys, if you look at what most attacks are happening right now, it's not happening on the big banks. It's happening in maybe a small bank, or maybe happening in open a new e-commerce website. Why? Because you know these guys are not really spending a lot on IT security. So it's an easy target, because you know attackers at the end of the day, They wanted easy target that they can make quick money from it. So this is also another thing to keep in mind when you look at the threats. So what we have covered from this report, guys, that we have more vulnerability than ever. We have vulnerability that dedicated only for mobile, because people are relying on mobile more and more. And companies right now allow an easy target and using this as an island hopping inside the organization. We have seen also that the threats are more targeted right now, and specifically they are really targeting companies. Why? Because you know they are easy to really exploit and easy to compromise than the big company. They spend a lot in IT security. Okay, so this is what we talk about here, guys. Is we call it the threat landscape. We're trying to find out who's our enemy, okay, and what they are doing. Okay, why? Because again, in order to win a war, you need to understand how enemies and what enemies are doing, and you really need to understand yourself. So kind of doing risk is kind of to tell you what's happening inside your organization, what kind of assets you have, what kind of vulnerability you have. So this is looking at your weaknesses. And then now the landscape is going to educate you about where is the adversary right now are doing, and what they do to exploit system, and what kind of tools they are using. Okay, guys? They use SolarWinds exactly to hack Microsoft and Intel. So this is very good example, Shaza, to some of the risk that comes from something called supply chain. In 2016, as Shazad, all of you guys, if you have time today, is just write down SolarWinds cyber attacks, just in YouTube, and enjoy 10 minutes or maybe 15 minutes of really something that's gonna blow your mind. How Russian attackers, I'm not quite sure it's Russian. You know, sometimes they are saying it's Russian because, you know, they wanted to make Russia or China evil. I really do not know. Okay, so it's very hard to tell one company or one nation is evil all the time. Okay, exploited gap in the US. Okay, so Shaza is saying they exploited that gap. So SolarWinds, guys, was a really nice attack that they said, okay, you know, Intel are using SolarWinds. So what is SolarWinds? It's basically SolarWinds is a company that develops software, and this software are used for network management, for security management. So they have a lot of tools that a lot of companies are using. So if you wanted to really monitor your traffic, okay, or having a net flow in your traffic, you can buy from them some of their software, okay? So their tools are really good and really expensive, and it's used to so many companies at the same time, okay? They are, as Shaza was saying, Microsoft was using it, the government in the US are using it, okay, Intel, they are using it, FireEye is using it, which is one of the vendors. So vendor of security are using tools, okay? So what happened is the attackers, they said, okay, we cannot after all the US government is still, okay, it's not easy. So what we can do is, we can do something called supply chain attack. And the supply chain attack, say this is the attacker over here, okay? I will check what tools, okay, all these companies are using, okay? I will attack these tools, okay? If I get malicious, so I'm creating like a Trojan horse, people will start to download my tool here as a good, nice application, but in the same time, it's opened the door for me as a backdoor to attack their system. So this is what we call supply chain. Why supply chain? Because the attacker here, guys, are going after main supplier, okay, and they exploit their system, and then once they exploit the system, they will have a foothold in all other companies. Using the same attacker here, whether it's Russian or not, okay, is around 5,000 companies. 5,000 companies all around the globe, because SolarWinds was selling this also in the Middle East, was selling this in Europe. Okay, So the way that they did this, they said, okay, all these servers on all this guys on all this server over here, guys, is using our software. So they looked for a specific server here in SolarWinds, and they look for a server who pushing the updates. Okay, one of the updates, they say, okay, you know what? Let's us, the Russian guys or whatever, they attacked the server. Okay, and they looked for the new update. They managed to really replace this update with their malicious update. That is just all what they did. And they did this in a very sneaky way. So they waited, they understand what software they have. So this is talks a lot from the attacker, because the attacker, he cannot just take the software here and add a malware to it and send it to them easily. No. He got the, first of all, he got the updates. He analyzed this update, guys. He understand what this update is doing exactly. And then he embedded his malicious code inside the updates. Okay. And because these guys, whether Microsoft or Intel or maybe the government in the US, he trusts when say we have an update, I will know this update without a trust relationship between SolarWinds and these companies. Because once update started to run in these machines, they set up a command and control center, and all these companies at the same time, all this government institution, okay, were really reporting to him. Okay, and by the way, guys, even FireEye, which is the most advanced cybersecurity vendor in the whole world, is being compromised by this. They figured out that we have been compromised. They're the one that figured it out, but they initially they were also compromised by the attack. And that's why supply chain is one really risk that you really need to look at. You need to look at are they already taking security serious or no. We consider people in this case as an asset. So here we consider people in this case. So Naif is saying it must have testing the update before we release. Yes, 100%. But you again, but this is what is the trust relationship. You know, Abdulaziz for a long time. You're meeting Abdulaziz on a daily basis. And you never, you know, have something malicious. So because you trust him, okay, exactly. You trust him, you take this stuff. And that's why after this attack, guys, we started to talk about something new architect in the network. We call this zero trust architect. That means even if you are dealing with a server in a day-to-day basis, every time he give you something, you don't trust him. So this is the new architect is called zero trust. We'll talk about zero trust, inshallah, on the timing. But this is just if you guys have brought this thread thing, I just wanted to show you. Okay. Sorry, talking some time to talk about the SolarWinds. It's really nice to talk about some. Okay, so the cybersecurity is 16, but I also get you guys how it's 2022 looks like. So here, for example, if you can see, and so increasing. It used to be 2.4. Now it's almost double. And in cyber warfare, we've seen nations are really attacking another nations. We have seen Uruguay, and we have seen also Iran this year. We have seen Aramco last year. So there is a lot of attacks that's happening between nations right now. Again, this over here, guys, the one here, the motivation here chart, 71% okay, is cybercrime. Okay, malware. Look, this is for Naif. Malware continue to lead the attack techniques chart with 30% close to the value of Q. So now the malware is still most favorite way to really attack C operating from the dark without really interacting with the system. So once they infected a machine with one of these malware, they can just wait for this malware to do his job, and then maybe to do a whole ransom attacks against one of these networks, and then gain a lot of money out of it. Okay, guys. Here over here, industries with Fortis. Okay. One of the biggest investment banking. Okay, guys. Just give me 1 second, please. Okay, sorry about this, guys. So we back here again to talk about the threat landscape